what we're going to look at is content is king. Now, of course, that term gets bandied about quite a bit, but there are ways to do it right. There are ways to do it wrong. And the idea that you can just have a very simple image, a very simple product description, basic search on your B2B site, been there, done that. Those days are gone. And frankly, the depth of the content in the surveys we do shows that if it's not there, if it's not fast, easy, detailed, anything from great imagery to product selection to reviews to tech specs to all types of things, let alone, the specifications, then your site will not be sticky. And once again, a lot of companies are having problems with content because they've got this plethora of one-time buyers they're trying to turn into long-time customers. And to make your content stand out, I can't think of a better panel to close out today's event. And Gregg Walker from Bulbs, who we've known a long, long time, expert at this. Carlos Vigil from Southern Glazer Wine and Spirits. They just have overhauled everything. Lots to talk about with content. And then we actually have a published author in our mix. Justin King, who kind of wrote the definitive book on distributor e-commerce. So with that, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining our panel today. Now let's jump right into it. There's a lot of mediocre content out there, no question about it. I just rattled off why that is. Old images, simple product descriptions, maybe no reviews, recommendations. So if you're going to do this right, what elements should there be on a typical B2B product page that are going to drive traffic, drive conversion, and drive sales higher? So Gregg, let's start with you, if you will. Content the right way from bulbs.com's perspective, what is it on a product page?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things. I think you make a good point about imagery. I mean, I think that goes a long way. We take all our own images in-house. We don't utilize manufacturers' images. And we do a lot of that because we want to make sure people can really identify the product from the picture. If there are product-specific etchings on the bulb or fixture or something that really kind of identifies it, because more often than not, you're talking about a buyer that's got a product in their hand and they're looking to match it with something on your website. And so having sort of generic images from a manufacturer that you apply to multiple products isn't going to provide that type of identification that a buyer is looking for. And then I think it goes into a lot of the things you brought up. We make sure our product descriptions are well written and narrative and not copied and pasted from a catalog. And we make sure we've got kind of all of the really technical specifications on the page as well, so that a really educated buyer can find the very specific attributes that they're looking for, but a less educated buyer can still read through a narrative description that's going to explain exactly what that product should be used for.
All right. And Justin, let's move to you next, because as I mentioned, Salsify does this for a living, and as it were, the topic very well. You wrote the definitive book on distributor e-commerce. So when it comes to content that rivets and sticks, is there one size fit all or no? What's your take on that?
So first of all, definitive only means the only book. If there's another book that comes along, it probably won't be the definitive.
Understood.
Second of all, I want to be where Carlos is at. Wherever he's at, I want to switch places with him right now. So, I mean, this topic of content, I mean, this is completely different answer depending on if you're a distributor or if you're a manufacturer, right? What kind of content? So let's start on the brand manufacturing side. If you're a brand or manufacturer, the content you need to present has kind of two constructs. One, maybe something that you might not have thought about, but you have to understand the algorithms that you're operating under. For example, search on Grainger, the search box on Grainger.com is a different algorithm than the search box on Fastenal, on MSC, on Amazon, right? It's different than the A10. It used to be the A9. They just launched the A10 algorithm on Amazon. So for the keywords that you want to own, meaning the products that you want to show up first on Grainger.com, on Fastenal, on Ferguson, on Amazon, whatever it might be, you need to understand the algorithm that they have in place because you want your products to show up first. So one consideration for content should be, how does the distributor present my product? The second is just understanding the customer. I mean, if you understand the customers that are going to your different distributors, and by the way, different customers go to different distributors, right? For different applications, different solutions. If you can think it through, what's the algorithm? If you can understand and get help on what's the algorithm that's running on that distributor, and then who are the customers and what are they looking for? Then I think those are the two aspects that really make. And of course, that includes things like everything Gregg just said, right? Images, great description, great attributes, technical data sheets, and things like that. On the distributor side, really, it's just about, the content you want to present is about helping the customer do their job, right? And that's the biggest difference between us and retail, is that in B2B, it's all about helping our customer do their job. So what type of content is the customer looking for? What type of solutions are they looking for? Your customers are different from a customer that's going to one of your competitors. So what are they looking for? Of course, images, high quality images. I mean, I think it's 67 to 70% of product images in B2B still lack images. I mean, not images, an image, a single image, right? And so how does a customer that can't pick up the product understand that this is the right product? Images are so important to that. What about things like trade slang, right? In every part of the country, they call things different, right? They call things in the trade that they're in and the applications they're in, they use trade slang to describe it. Should your product content include that trade slang as well? And I think that's a good consideration. I think that I just want to bring up one thing. There's something interesting happening in the retail world. And I don't normally, I pay attention to retail, but I don't normally bring those concepts over. But there's a concept happening in the retail world that I think has huge applications in the B2B world. And that is paying attention to enhanced content. Amazon calls it A+ content. It's basically, you have your structured data above the fold, and then you have unstructured content from the manufacturer. This content, enhanced content or A+ content, allows a manufacturer to tell the brand story or tell a deeper story about that product, how it's used, where it's used, what applications it's used, in a very unstructured way. And I think if you take all those, understanding the algorithm, understanding the customer, if you're a distributor, understand the customer, the job they're supposed to do, and then looking at some of these concepts like enhanced content.
And I'd like to bring Carlos in. Carlos, we're going to play Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You ready? So what I mean by that, Carlos, is as you look at things, and your site is a good-looking site, and you serve a very large audience here. So if we're talking content is king, my question to you is, what's too much, what's not enough, and what is, to use the Goldilocks term, what is just right? So how do you folks look at that particular weighing of what your customer wants, that's not too much but just right, but basically gives them the content they need?
Yeah, no, thank you, Mark. And I apologize, I got some background noise here. Thank you, Justin, for wanting to switch places with me. And by the way, thank you. We're a customer of yours. We love your product. So it's really interesting, Mark. I was thinking about that exact question before today. And I think it really, so, we have a lot of reorders, right? We don't have a long sales cycle. Let's say a customer orders 50 of the same spirit products or wine products. And so it's a weekly purchase order. So for us, the PDP is very much what Justin and Gregg said, right? So you want to make sure you give what they need, the basics about that product, a description of that product. They always look to see if there's a label change or a packaging change. That's important. They need to see it. And I think, Justin, to your point, we're fortunate. Just like Gregg, we took our own images. We probably have about, I say 60, 70% of our images are on the site, but it's tough to maintain. But at the very least, the customer has the basic information they need. To your question, Mark, then it actually depends on what they're doing. We've heard a lot of feedback from customers saying, when I want to reorder, I want all that stuff to go away, right? I just want you to be, as fast as possible. I don't want to see content anymore. It's the same 60 products I order every week, but I want to explore. It's a little bit different. And I think for me, the way we're trying to look at it now is it an existing behavior or is it a new behavior from that customer? If it's a new behavior we want to drive, for example, maybe we want to push them into a new category. Maybe we want that customer to think about something a little bit differently, expand within an existing category. We're trying to create a dissonance between what they do today and what they could be doing and speaking to them on their business terms. So getting away from PDP content, getting more into the business of beverage, the business of whatever, and then creating maybe what could be in a future state versus what is today, and then linking that obviously to the purchase in some type of a funnel. So for us, it really is the stages they're in the buying process and what we want to help them do. And we're trying to get much more of a marketing bent to it. But we do, I just have to go back to that first point. We had a lot of comments from customers saying, we just want this to be faster. Like, I don't want images at a certain point, right? I do want the order templates. I do want to, this is B2B, right? We can only go consumerize to a certain degree before they say no. And then for us, we're fortunate that we don't have some of the configuration questions that other distributors have. We don't have to get into CPQs or anything like that. So it is a fast order cycle. And our challenge is more about getting them into that new pattern and then figuring out how to embed a newer behavior within that existing pattern without burdening them too much with content. They like the content, we see engagement, but it's still fundamentally a PLP search PDP world. It's tough to get that buyer to jump around and really do what we would do as consumers with discovery, because they kind of know what they want when they come into it, and you have to pick and choose your spots.
Okay, Gregg, let's pivot to you next. Explain this one to me. Okay, yeah, I get content is king. Yeah, I understand that that more is better than less, but it's the mix I'm talking about here. So my question to you is, Bulbs you're the long view of e-commerce. You've been doing this for an awfully long time, meaning bulbs.com. You do things incredibly well, but my question to you is, 2/3 of all B2B transactions begin, with some kind of search for who's got my product, what are the specs for it, is it in? And our research shows that's not just a one-off procurement director. There's teams of people that act in coordination to kind of find what they want. So my point to you is, if more and more of the content is starting online, meaning the search to find the manufacturer or distributor who has what that particular customer is looking for, then you arrive on a distribution site. A lot of things in B2B land are still locked behind a firewall. So to me, that's a content catch-22. So if more searches looking for more content begin online, yet a lot of B2B companies still lock the best stuff behind a firewall, how do you balance the two, do you think?
Yeah, I think I think it depends on what your business is. If you're in e-commerce to really kind of support your existing customers, to provide a sort of purchasing portal, having things locked behind the firewall, might make a lot more sense. But I personally think that companies that still embrace that without a real need for it just aren't embracing e-commerce the way they need to. We're not a fan of. When we started the company, we dabbled in a little bit of that and realized it was not going to work from a customer acquisition perspective. We only work with one manufacturer that's required us to maintain some information only after login, and it's a limited number of products. And so that product line may work well for our inside sales reps to sell, but it doesn't work from a customer acquisition perspective. So we do put our information out there, and that doesn't make us a race to be the lowest price. We're bringing more than just price to the offering, and so that's how we track down customers. And to your point about content, that's something you want to think about. If they're coming in off of a product search, you want to find more and more ways to keep them engaged on that page, so that if they've performed a search and they've landed on a product that's close but not the right product, you want to make sure your product detail page has lots of easy options to switch to the next product. Using bulbs as an example, if they've landed on a 3000K bulb, they should be able to easily switch to a 5000K of the exact same bulb, so that you're keeping them kind of in that shopping experience, as opposed to having them come in off of an ad, not find what they're looking for, and just bounce.
And Carlos, what's your take on that? I mean, what's enough and what's not enough when it comes to this question of great content in front or behind the firewall?
Yeah, so we place all of our product in front of the firewall. So any customer, in fact, any consumer can go to shop.sgproof.com and see our products by state. We do not put pricing or inventory information publicly available, but we do want them to see what products we carry. And it has been an advantage to us. So in fact, we went out of our way to do that. I don't think we do anything particularly sophisticated with SEO, but we did want to make it very shoppable for anybody who could find the product. A lot of the buyers or a lot of the people within the buying process that are customers don't necessarily have the authentication status. So we did want them to expose them to the product catalog for sure.
Okay. And Justin, let's pivot to you on this very same question. How much is the right mix or not enough mix of content that's going to grip whoever that particular buyer is? And, you know, there's a lot of B2B distributors that still do have things behind the firewall. So what's enough? What's not enough?
I mean, I love what Greg said about making it easy for the customer, right? And in my opinion, and really, you know, this is what the most innovative distributors and marketplaces do out there, is that only pricing and inventory should be locked behind the firewall. And of course, it depends on the industry. There might be some industries that might be reasons for it not to be, but pricing and inventory, because, you know, if you have custom pricing for that customer, a specific customer has to be logged in to get a specific pricing, then it makes sense why you would change or hide pricing and maybe even change inventory, because inventory might be based off of terms and conditions. But in general, everything else, Mark, I think everything else should be shown to the customer, that customers should be able to make decisions based off of the information they see directly from your website, whether they're logged in or not.
And Carlos, let's go back to you for maybe a concise view on this one, which is, what is an absolute no-no for what not to do? I mean, you want to shoot yourself in the foot and do content the wrong way. What are some no-nos to keep in mind, do you think?
Yeah, for us in the B2B context, I think would be going too far down the path of consumerized content. I think we wanted to experiment with it. We've gotten some engagement, but the truth is it hasn't been as powerful as some would have hoped. Again, our buyers probably want to spend 5 to 6 minutes with their purchase, and you have to respect that. So I think it's back to Justin's point, it's understanding where the customer is, what they want to do, and how to get them there, and playing within those parameters. It's pretty much our golden rule, and anything else outside of that really just doesn't work. So at least that's for us, right? And it does, as Greg said, it does depend on the industry and the purchase cycle and what they were looking to do.
And Justin, you're trying to bat here on the same question. What is an absolute no-no? I mean, you really want to do content not the right way. What are some common mistakes that you see there? What don't you want to do?
I'm going to bring up something that maybe is a little controversial and is relying on scraping to get your content, right? Both as a distributor and your manufacturer. So the distributor relies on scraping manufacturers' content to bring that content in, and the manufacturer relies on their distributors scraping their content. Instead of being intentional and collaborating together and saying, okay, distributors saying, hey, these are my customers. This is the type of decisions they're trying to make, the type of research they're trying to do. Can we work together and collaborate to get the best content about your products in front of our customer? Why? I mean, why? To sell more, right? The distributor is going to sell more and the manufacturer is going to sell more. But so many distributors and so many manufacturers, they rely on kind of third-party scraping of content. And that just gets so outdated so fast. I mean, scraping doesn't happen every week on a manufacturer site. It tends to happen every month or every quarter, and sometimes just once a year, once every 2 years. So relying on this scraping technology to get your content versus being intentional together to build that content, I think is the biggest no-no.
And Greg, let's pivot to you. I got to tell you, I have been a long-term fan of bulbs.com with a lot of things you folks have done, e-commerce. We've known you folks for a lot of years, but since you kind of have the long view of all this, what are some no-nos? What don't you want to do?
Well, I love the word intentional that Justin used. I think that's, I think that's 100% right. I think our merchandising team, they don't, like I said, they don't just kind of take information from a manufacturer and copy and paste it, and so that we can get a product live. They want to understand how the product's used, who's going to use it, which one of our customers are going to benefit from it, and how. And they create intentional content around that. We do create our own videos, and in addition to our own photos, when we get in a product that we think would really benefit from a descriptive video that's going to explain whether it be installation, compatibility, what's in the box, that's kind of the first thing we jump on. And so really sort of shortchanging that content and just saying, okay, we want to sell this new product line, and just, taking the basic information and regurgitating it onto a product detail page just isn't going to have a lot of success, I don't think.
And, our final question is one that I'd like to kind of leave some pretty good advice, some pretty good best practices from, folks like you who know this cold. So, Gregg, let's start with you for our final question here, which is, recommend a good best practice for making content that's really going to resonate, that anybody can do. It doesn't matter your size or organization. What do you think? What are a couple of best practices that you folks can recommend?
Well, it's going to depend on your size and your resources and such, and how much you can get done. But really, customizing that content as opposed to just pulling it from a manufacturer can be big. And we've utilized internships, marketing internships to write content. We've got people in our merchandising department, but creating that content that keeps the customer engaged on that page is important to us. Like I said, when somebody comes in, it's not going to be uncommon for them, particularly in our industry, where they've landed on a product that's close but not quite there. And how good your content and functionality to be able to keep them engaged and find similar products or switch between specific attributes is going to keep them on that page and keep them shopping. And once they find the correct product, if you've tailored that content correctly, they're going to convert.
And Carlos, how about a best practice from you? What's a concise point of view or best practice that you folks would recommend?
Gregg just said, I think it's really important to make it relevant to that customer and make it your own and not just scrape it. I also think, and we're just trying to do this better now, you need a particular piece of content to speak to. Same in our world to have somebody who is a liquor store owner versus somebody who's a convenience store owner versus somebody who's a bar and nightclub owner versus somebody who owns an Italian restaurant. And that product will speak differently to them. It may all have similar profitability, or at least there may be some profitability models, but you have to speak to them. There's the basic description, right? This is the product, this is what it tastes like, this is what you can do, but how you use it, what it means to them is very important. And again, we're just scratching the surface on that, but what we're learning is that if you really want to move the needle, that's incredibly important as well. And like Gregg said, it's tough because we don't necessarily have an army of content creators. And so you have to pick and choose what are your best spots.
And Justin, the final word concisely is you. What's a best practice that you'd recommend for folks out there of any size to improve their content?
Yeah, I mean, for both distributors and manufacturers, create a content program. It's not a project, it's a program, right? So it doesn't have a start date, doesn't have an end date for sure. Content is something, there's no such thing as good content. There's only content that's getting better every week, every month, every year. Create the program. And for manufacturers, as part of that program, the ability to publish content at scale to your distributors, and for distributors, the ability to bring in that content from your manufacturer.
And to keep in mind, no scraping, been there, done that, no more. And with that, I would like to thank our esteemed panel, Gregg, Carlos, you folks, Justin, you folks knocked it out here. We appreciate that. And with that, that concludes